What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. So I had this whole video planned for today that was pretty technically involved. It was going to take me a lot of time to film and then edit it. And then my preschooler was up with me for most of the night last night because she's nighttime potty training. And so after I got about 4 hours of interrupted sleep for the night last night, I just wasn't really feeling up for a full-on video today. And that leads us to our topic of the day, which is about how being a parent affects our work. Obviously, today's video is inspired by personal events because I'm exhausted, but also I've heard a lot from fellow parents this sense of pressure of feeling like even though parenting takes up a lot of our time and energy, that our work should somehow not be affected by it. That mindset just doesn't seem reality-based to me, and I think it's also highly problematic. Now, don't get me wrong, you can do it all. You can work and be an awesome parent, but it's unreasonable to expect that once you bring a child into your life, that your work is going to be completely unaffected by that child. When we are less productive or when we are feeling tired, we can start to carry a sense of shame because we're telling ourselves, no, I should be able to be just as productive as I would be otherwise, even if I didn't have a kid, even if I wasn't a caregiver of somebody else. So there must be something wrong with me then that I'm feeling like I can't be as on top of it at work as I would otherwise be. And then because of the shame that's there, we try to cover it up. So on the inside, we're carrying this really kind of negative narrative that somehow there's something wrong with us or we're doing something wrong, we're not measuring up. But on the outside, we're trying to make it look like we're fine and we're not so tired and we're just as productive as usual. And then because we're not showing it on the outside, then it kind of reinforces that narrative for other people where we go, oh, well, look, so-and-so seems like they're doing just fine and they have 3 kids. So like, what's the issue for me? I only have 1. Whatever the story is, when in reality, we're all kind of like quietly holding it on the inside that like, yeah, our work is affected because we're a parent. Now, I get that I have full freedom to say this out loud without repercussion because I work for myself. So the only employer who can sort of call me out for being less productive is myself. And if you are working for an employer who's another person and you acknowledge that your productivity is being impacted because you're a caregiver of another human, well, then you might be worried that something about your job is at risk. And of course, you're not going to do anything to risk that, as I wouldn't. So this isn't something that there's really permission to talk about. So let me name a reality that might not always be feasible to name in your workplace setting. Caring for a child is a full-time job. Even if you have a co-parent with you, or maybe you have paid childcare, at any point something could happen to your childcare, your child could get sick, whatever it is, and you are now the point of contact to make sure that that human is okay. And you may need to prioritize your child over your work. So because of that, any work that you take on beyond taking care of your child, or maybe if you're a caregiver for, an elderly parent or something like that, any work you take on beyond that is on top of your sort of full-time job. I mean, even for me, working for myself super part-time, when something happens with my kids' daycare that they're not able to go, maybe they're too sick or something like that, then I have a decision to make. First of all, my husband and I have to decide which of the 2 of us is going to be in charge of the kiddos instead, and one of us has to take sick time from our work. And then if it's me, then I have to figure out, do I skip on the work that I had planned? Do I try to move it around to a different time when I probably don't have childcare? Or do I try to adjust it in some way where I kind of do it part way, or do something like what I'm doing today, where I take something on that's a bit easier than what I had planned? Personally, I often wind up trying to just make time in my schedule if I don't have access to my usual childcare hours to get work done by, staying up in the evenings that week and just getting the same amount of work done, but sometimes staying up till midnight in order to make it happen. I'm aware that that's a choice that I make, that I personally don't have to make, but I know that for some folks, it's not a choice. You have to make time one way or another. It's hard. One thing I'm a little nervous about in making this video is that it might somehow come across as complaining when, let me remind you, I work for myself. I work super part-time. If I ever wanted to just sort of drop everything and just be with my kids, I have the privilege of making that choice if I want to. The reason why I created Private Practice Skills was so I would have that flexibility so that I could at any point drop everything and be there with my kids. So when a day like today happens where my kid keeps me up all night and I decide to pivot whatever I'm working on, I feel super grateful that I am working for myself and I can do that if I want to, rather than feeling like trapped in whatever my employer expects of me that day. Rather, I wanted to make this video because I know there are so many folks out there who carry this sense of pressure that your work output should remain the same, even if you bring 1 or 2 or 3 children into your household, or maybe, you're caregiving an elderly family member or something along those lines. And though I believe you absolutely can do both work and parenting or caregiving, whomever you might be taking care of, it's really unreasonable to expect that once you bring somebody else into your household who you're taking care of, that your work output will just flow out with the same ease as it always had. This is how it should be, because when we prioritize something, it tends to require sacrifices in other areas of our lives, or at least it impacts other areas of our lives. We can't just magically produce more energy or hours in the day because, science. Now there's a piece that feels really important to acknowledge here. As I've been talking about being a parent and a caregiver, I'm kind of just lumping everybody's experience into one broad category when there are so many differences depending on what your kind of current life experience is. I mean, if you are a solo caregiver versus a, co-parent, you're going to have different experiences. And even more so if, let's say, you're a co-parent with somebody who is comfortable kind of earning the income for the household while you have the freedom to either earn income or not. I mean, there's all kinds of nuances to this story, and I just want to acknowledge that. The other piece that I want to acknowledge in this video is, as I said, I'm only working 2 days a week. I have the privilege of being able to do that. And for some folks watching, that may not be an option for you because you may need to work full time in order to pay the bills, in order to take care of your children, for example. And I know also for some of you watching, you may really want to be working, but when you do the math of childcare, your paycheck isn't reasonable enough to cover the cost of childcare, which is an unfortunate reality that's true for so many folks. Whatever context you're in, I want to emphasize that being a caregiver is a full-on job. So if you're a caregiver and you ever feel tired or unproductive, or you're noticing that it's challenging to keep up with your work tasks, I encourage you to invite some self-compassion, to acknowledge this makes sense that I feel this way. And yeah, you can problem solve from there, but to be hard on yourself for not achieving the same level of, work productivity as you might have otherwise if you weren't a caregiver is just unreasonable. So I hope you can be a little more kind to yourself. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes is a practice management system where, you can write your notes at home after your kids go to bed if that's what you need to do. And they also cover so many other of your practice management needs. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link on the description of this video. Well, I won't lie, today's video was a little bit off the cuff in many ways, and I kind of rambled. So I hope this is helpful to at least some of you. And if you have any tips for caregivers and how to kind of find that sort of work-life balance that we all always want but seems so elusive, leave a comment below so others can glean from your experience. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.